It starts with a ridiculous, mandatory promotional interview again. They sit Atsumu down on a couch, solo this time, and shove the same plastic bowl filled with printed tweets into his hands. He's the star of today's segment, basking in the attention like it's his natural habitat. Sakusa, unfortunately, is also here, just not on camera. He's off to the side, arms crossed, posture rigid, watching from behind the set with an expression that wavers somewhere between indifference and something else. Something that tightens his jaw when Atsumu grins at the screen, something that narrows his eyes when the interviewer gets a little too chummy with him. Atsumu reaches in first, unfolding the paper with dramatic flair. His eyes scan the words, then they scan them again. He blinks. Slowly, he reads aloud. Maya's wife, aspirational tweeted. I would let Atsumu ruin my life by squeezing my head until it pops with his huge hands and say thank you actually. I'd say please actually, I'd pay him. Holy shit. I mean that's real nice of ya, darling. He scratches the back of his head, a poor attempt at playing it cool from off camera. There's a scoff, quiet, but distinct. Sakusa Kiyumi. Atsumu doesn't look, but he smirks anyway. He clears his throat. Would you really pay me? Don't encourage them. Sakusa mutters, just loud enough to be picked up on mic. The crew stifles laughter. People like you enough as it is. Course they do. Atsumu grins, recovering with the ease of someone who thrives in this particular brand of chaos. I'm the perfect package. That's debatable. Sakusa deadpans. Atsumu winks at the camera, laying it on thick. Sweetheart, you hearing this? Some people just don't appreciate what they got right in front of him. There's a sharp inhale. Sakusa doesn't dignify that with a response. Atsumu picks up another tweet. I love a trash man tweeted. I know Atsumu is the type of guy to call you sweetheart in the most condescending tone possible, and I, for one, would heat that up. There's a pause then. Sweetheart. Atsumu drawls, voice honey thick, sickeningly sweet. That's real nice of ya. Someone chokes, whether it's a staff member or Sakusa himself. Atsumu can't tell, but it sends him into a fit of laughter. That was repulsive. Sakusa grits out. Atsumu feigns hurt. Omi, you're breaking my heart. Good. Atsumu gasps, all dramatics from the corner of his eye. He catches Sakusa shifting, arms still crossed, expression unreadable. He picks up another tweet. Someone hold me tweeted. Mia Atsumu is proof that men can be both the problem and the solution. I am sick. Atsumu preens. See? Perfect package. Sakusa exhales, long and suffering. You are a menace. I can be both. Versatility is key. Someone in the background mutters something about God giving his toughest battles to his strongest soldiers. Atsumu grins. He reaches for another slip of paper. Soft for Mia tweeted. I just know Atsumu smells good like expensive cologne and regret. Atsumu barks out a laugh. You ain't wrong, my cologne's the real deal. Sakusa snorts, unimpressed. The regret part's accurate, too. You wound me, Omi. Atsumu feigns a dramatic swoon, hand clutching his chest from his peripheral vision. He can see Sakusa shift slightly, the line of his jaw tightening. Is that annoyance, or something else? Atsumu can't quite tell, but the flicker of emotion is enough to pique his interest. He fishes for another tweet, the paper crinkling in his hand. Valibi tweeted. Atsumu could make me cry just by calling me a good girl and I would thank him. Atsumu whistles low, a dangerous glint in his eyes. You all are bold. He lets his gaze linger on the camera for a beat too long, imagining the reactions on the other side of the screen. Someone in the crew lets out a strangled noise, quickly muffled. Sakusa doesn't say a word, but Atsumu doesn't miss the way his fingers flex against his arm, the knuckles turning white. There's a possessiveness there, a territoriality that sends a shiver of something hot and thrilling down Atsumu's spine. He grins, the expression sharp and predatory. Good girl. He says, voice rough and low, deliberately directed at the camera. He drags out the O in good, making it 2 syllables, laced with a suggestive undertone. There's a loud thud. Someone might have dropped something backstage, possibly their dignity. Atsumu's grin widens. He's pushing his luck, and he knows it. He glances at Sakusa, whose face is impassive, but there's a muscle ticking in his cheek, a barely suppressed tension radiating off him in waves. Sakusa exhales sharply. This is a disaster. His voice is low, a bare murmur, but there's an edge to it now, a barely contained something. Atsumu beams, oblivious to the chaos he's causing. Nah, it's fun. He shuffles through the remaining tweets, his eyes scanning the words with amusement. Fight me for Omi tweeted. Atsumu, I'd wrestle you for the chance to even look at Sakusa. Winner gets him, right? Parenthesis. Atsumu raises an eyebrow, a slow smirk spreading across his face. Now, hold on a minute. He says, his tone light and teasing. This was supposed to be about me, yep, my devastating charm and whatnot? Then his eyes flick towards Sakusa, a glint in them before turning back to the camera. Think you're strong enough to take me on? He adds, the challenge clear. He catches Sakusa's gaze for a fleeting moment, noting the almost imperceptible widening of Sakusa's eyes, the slight flush that dusts Sakusa's cheeks, the way Sakusa very deliberately swallows. Atsumu's smirk deepens. He's definitely gotten a reaction. Turning back to the camera, he adds, don't worry, your pretty little head. He continues, his gaze fixed on the camera now. Omi's got good taste. He knows who he wants. He punctuates the sentence with a wink, the possessiveness now layered under a thick veneer of playful confidence. Sakusa's eyes narrow almost imperceptibly, his composure momentarily disrupted. A faint pink still colors his ears, a stark contrast to his pale skin. His arms are still crossed, but there's a dangerous stillness to his posture, a tautness in his shoulders that betrays his inner turmoil, quickly suppressed but not entirely hidden. Atsumu's words, possessive and challenging, have clearly thrown him off balance. Atsumu chuckles, the sound deceptively carefree, but it rings a little hollow. Right, well. He claps his hands together, the sound sharp and overly cheerful, the movement a bit too abrupt. Let's look at what's next on the agenda, shall we? His smile is a touch too wide, too bright. Atsumu is hotter than the sun. Tweeted. Atsumu's thick thighs could cause heart problems and also heal my soul at the same time. Yes, the duality of man. Atsumu's smile has faltered slightly since the lingering tension from the previous tweet. The unspoken challenge and Sakusa's unreadable reaction still hangs heavy in the air, making it difficult for Atsumu to fully relax back into his usual persona. Well, aren't you a poet? He says, his voice a bit quieter than usual, lacking its usual boisterous energy. He rubs the back of his neck, a subtle sign of unease. He flashes a quick grin at the camera, but it seems forced and doesn't linger. His gaze flicks to Sakusa, a flicker of uncertainty in them before he quickly looks away. What do you think, Omi? Should I be held responsible for emotional damages? His voice is a little lower than usual, the teasing edge subdued. Sakusa's lips twitch almost imperceptibly, a hint of a smile threatening to break through his carefully maintained composure. His eyes flick to Atsumu and then away again, a flicker of something unreadable in their depths. Considering your track record, probably. He replies, his tone flat. He seems to have regained his composure, the earlier fluster fading. Atsumu after dark tweeted. I bet Atsumu's all passion, no restraint, behind closed doors. I'd do anything to see that firsthand. Atsumu's gaze lingers on Sakusa for a moment longer than necessary. There's a flicker of something intense in his eyes, a spark of awareness that makes the air thicken slightly. He swallows, the movement almost imperceptible. A slow smirk curls his lips. Oh, do you now? Seems like everyone's got their own ideas about what goes on behind closed doors. Then comes the final tweet. Hinataro69 tweeted. One of these days both of them are going to realize that Atsumu also looks at Sakusa the way Bakuro looks at Akashi, and then we're all gonna die. Silence descends, thick and heavy. Sakusa's head tilts slightly, his dark eyes boring into Atsumu. There's an unreadable intensity in his gaze, a question hanging in the air. He's watching Atsumu too closely now, the indifference completely gone, replaced by something far more potent. Ridiculous. Atsumu mutters, but it comes out weaker than intended, his voice slightly hoarse. He can feel his heart pounding in his chest, a strange mix of fear and exhilaration swirling within him. Is it? Sakusa asks, voice quiet, almost challenging. Atsumu doesn't answer. Doesn't need to. The air crackles with unspoken tension, a silent conversation passing between them. The segment ends. Atsumu stands, stretching his arms above his head with a lazy grin. Sakusa doesn't move from his spot, just watches, his dark eyes intense. Atsumu can't decipher the expression, but there's a weight to it that makes his own smile falter. Later, in the hallway, the fluorescent lights hum overhead as Sakusa stops abruptly, his hand clamping down on Atsumu's arm. Why do you do that? His voice is low, a bare murmur in the sterile environment. Atsumu turns, brows raised in genuine confusion. Do what? Flirt with everyone? Sakusa says, jaw tight, the words clipped and precise. You act like it doesn't mean anything. There's a flash of something in his eyes. Is it vulnerability, quickly masked by a scowl? Atsumu frowns, the easygoing facade slipping. "'Cause I don't?" He tries to keep his tone light, but there's an edge there now, a defensive prickle. Sakusa exhales, sharp and frustrated, the sound echoing slightly in the empty hall. "Never mind." He turns to walk away, dismissing the whole exchange. But Atsumu isn't about to let it go. Realization, slow and dawning, spreads across his face. "Wait, hold on." He catches Sakusa's arm, halting him. "Are ya?" Atsumu grins, wide and challenging. "Omi, are you jealous?" Sakusa's glare intensifies, if that's even possible. "Shut up." Atsumu steps closer, crowding Sakusa's space. "You're jealous." He repeats it, relishing the way Sakusa's eyes darken. This isn't indifference, it's something hotter, something real. Sakusa doesn't step back, he meets Atsumu's gaze head-on, a silent battle of wills. "I said shut up." Each word is enunciated with a dangerous calm. Atsumu tilts his head, his own voice lowering, becoming a husky purr. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" The question hangs in the air, heavy with implication. Sakusa hesitates, his gaze flickers away for a split second, a flicker of uncertainty in the storm, then, low, almost grudgingly. "Because you never looked at me like that." Atsumu's breath catches in his throat, the air seems to thicken, charged with unspoken desires and simmering tension. He takes another step closer, the space between them shrinking to almost nothing. He can feel the heat radiating off Sakusa, the rigid set of his muscles. Sakusa's gaze flickers downward. Atsumu watches his throat bob with a swallow, a betraying sign of nerves, then snaps back up, meeting Atsumu's stare head-on. Something pulses between them, heavy and weighted, a magnetic pull neither seems able to resist. It's in the way Sakusa's nostrils flare slightly, the way his fingers twitch at his sides. "Omi." Atsumu murmurs, voice rougher now, laced with a possessiveness he doesn't try to hide. "Look at me now." Sakusa doesn't know. The intensity in those dark eyes is a revelation. It's not coldness Atsumu sees, but a burning hunger, a desperate longing. Carefully leash, the tension snaps like a wire pulled too tight, the air crackling with the force of it. "I like ya, Omi." Sakusa's breath shudders out, a shaky exhale. "You're insufferable." But there's no real heat behind it, no genuine anger. Atsumu smirks, his fingers reaching out to graze Sakusa's wrist, the touch light but deliberate. He feels the answering pulse under his fingertips. "You're obsessed with me." Sakusa doesn't deny it, he doesn't pull away, doesn't break eye contact. There's a recognition in his gaze, an acknowledgement of a truth he can no longer hide. The silence stretches, thick with anticipation. Atsumu can feel his own heart pounding, the blood rushing in his ears. He wants, needs, to close the distance, to bridge the gap that's been there for so long. Then, finally, Atsumu leans in, his movements deliberate, giving Sakusa every chance to retreat, but Sakusa doesn't. He meets Atsumu halfway, his lips parting slightly in invitation. The kiss is slow, tentative at first. Atsumu tastes the sharpness of Sakusa's surprise, the hesitant surrender. Then, with a low groan, Sakusa deepens it, his fingers clutching at Atsumu's shirt, pulling him closer. Atsumu tangles his hands in Sakusa's dark hair, relishing the feel of it against his skin. There's a desperation in the way they cling to each other, a frantic need to make up for lost time. When they finally break apart, breathless and flushed, Sakusa's eyes are dark and dilated. Atsumu smirks, tracing a thumb along Sakusa's jawline. "See? Told ya." Sakusa's lips twitch. "You're still insufferable." Atsumu laughs, the sound genuine and joyful. He leans in to press another quick kiss to Sakusa's lips. "But you love me anyway." It's a statement, not a question, and this time, Sakusa doesn't argue.